mid-level and senior professionals to top data people.
If you were to ask, or if you were to try to be a data person to say, how would I get really, really good at the business side of data work? Like, where would you even start? What would you do? And I designed Top Data People to be an answer to that question.
Welcome to the Data Nerd Podcast. I'm your host, Nisar Ahmed. Join me as we explore the inner data nerd inside all of us. Dive into the world of data alongside special guests who not only share their wealth of experience and knowledge, but also unveil what truly makes them data nerds. This podcast is brought to you by Business Intelligence. That's BIZNIS Intelligence. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Business Intelligence to stay up to date with Tableau training and the Data Nerd podcast. Connect with me on LinkedIn or stream the Data Nerd podcast across all major podcast platforms. Hey everyone, welcome to the Data Nerd podcast. I'd like to welcome you to season 2. We took a little bit of a break in the summer, and now we're back with season 2 of the Data Nerd podcast. Our next guest, Solomon Kahn. I've been actually meaning to have him on in season 1. It just one thing led to another. Our schedules didn't jive, but I am fortunate to have Solomon on now as our first guest in season 2. So just welcome Solomon to the Data Nerd podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be the first guest on season 2. Very excited for this conversation.
Yeah, no, I'm excited as well. I think this conversation could have gone a number of different ways, and there's a lot of things you can talk about. But I'm really excited to talk about our topic today, which is your top data people, right? You're talking about mid-level and senior level data professionals and how they can, progress in their career, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So a little bit of an introduction. Solomon Kahn is a data executive who has led data teams and businesses at a range of companies, from startups like Paperless Post and Helium 10 to publicly traded companies like Nielsen. He's currently the founder of 2 different companies in the data space, Delivery Layer, where they build customer-facing analytics applications, and Top Data People, a 6 month professional development program for senior and mid-level data people that helps them learn to drive more business impact with data. So excited to talk about this topic, Solomon. But before we do, I like to ask all my guests an introductory question. This being the Data Nerd podcast. And I'd like to ask you, are you a data nerd? And if so, tell me your story when you realized you were one.
Yeah, I think I would be considered a data nerd by most definitions of that term.
Mm.
And it's interesting because I didn't start out in my career even thinking that I was a data person, even though I was a data person. So I studied operations research in college
Mm.
and then went into finance because 20 years ago, when I graduated college, that's what many of the people who got technical degrees did.
Yeah.
And I was working as an analyst in Excel all day. I still wouldn't have considered myself a data person because our industry didn't exist in the way that it does now. And then I transitioned from finance to technology, and because I was really interested in how I thought most of the cool things that were going to get built in my life were going to be technology products. So I wanted to learn more about technology, teach myself programming, the whole thing. And then when data science became a thing, I was like, oh, wow, this is like the perfect combination of everything that I had wanted to do in my career, because it was like the statistics from operations research and the business knowledge that I got from working in finance and the tech side of what I was doing and where I thought all of the cool things were going to happen in the world. And it was all combined into one thing, and I sort of became an official data person and have been running with that ever since.
That's great. So you talked about, how you started off with Excel. I was the same way. Like I started off as an Excel, and you're right. We don't really realize you're a data person until maybe later on. And like you said, I think being a data person now is much more defined than it was before, right?
Yes.
Before you're working in Excel, I don't know, maybe you're like a reporting person, really, I don't know. That's kind of what I consider myself. But that's a great story, and I think a lot of people can relate because I feel like even if you're not a data person, meaning you don't have a title of a data analyst, you can still be a data person because a lot of roles require you to work with data, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So let's talk about your top data people. Okay, so you have this 6 months professional development, would I call it a program?
Yep.
Right. So what inspired you to start this, and can you tell us a little bit about what it is?
Sure. So I've been a data leader for a long time, and over the course of my career, I've managed hundreds of data people, and I've seen what the top data people have done differently that have made them so effective. And you recently just talked a second ago about how nowadays there's like a much more defined job of what data is compared to the olden days.
Mm.
And that comes with a lot of benefits because people kind of know where to start to learn to become a data person. I think one of the things that we've lost a little bit actually is that in the early days, your job was to essentially justify your existence by providing value to the company. There wasn't an idea of companies need data people. It was you were really good in your company using data and you drove all of this business value. And so everyone was like, do more of that. Like, dive into that, do more. And not and as a result, data people in that early cohort needed to get really, really good at actually making an impact in the business with data because there was no expectation from leadership that, hey, we need data. It's like, no, you needed to like work for your lunch every day.
Yeah.
um, and one of the things that's happened as data has become more professional and expected inside companies is that there is more of a path for data people to learn the technical side of what to do, and there's more of and there's less training on what they actually need to do to go drive an impact at their company. And that's one area that I think we've lost a little bit. And when I think about where are the gaps in data people, it's almost never technical skills, right? Data people there's so many resources out there for data people to learn whatever technical skills that they need. But if you were to ask, or if you were to try to be a data person to say, how would I get really, really good at the business side of data work? Like, where would you even start? What would you do? And I designed top data people to be an answer to that question of how do you learn and develop and get a roadmap for your career of all of the non-technical stuff that is really once you get to the senior and mid-level of data work, that's really what sets you apart. It's not the technical skills anymore.
So you're really catering to that, you're not entry level data people, right? So this is
No.
mid, so their experience, you're assuming that they're already good on the technical side, right? And they want to progress in the career in more of a leadership capability, right? Or capacity. And so you mentioned that companies realize that we need these people in leadership positions. And I think what you said about not having some of that skill set because it's not like the technical side is very easy to not easy to learn, but you have like a playbook, you have a blueprint on how to learn whatever topic it is in data. But when it comes to some of the, I don't know, business side, or some of those intangible skills, or maybe some of those soft skills, communication, that is lacking. It's true. I personally think myself, I can use more training on that. I don't think you can ever stop learning that, right? And so what kind of skills do you teach? Are we talking about soft skills? Is it communication and presentation? Um, and or is it more, learning the business you're in? Because you could be like, I'm in healthcare, right? Do you
Yeah.
teach me differently than somebody who might be in, finance or banking?
Yeah, great questions. So the curriculum is like a 6 month curriculum, and people can join the program at any time. It loops around, and you're just part of it for 6 months, and you get access to the content. Um, but the way that I've approached it, and again, I don't know if there's a perfect way to execute a plan, but this is sort of my different people would probably approach this differently. But here's how I did it, which is that number one, I wanted to give everybody a framework for how to analyze themselves because it's not data work is not the same everywhere, right? Like you said, you're in healthcare. You're going to need to learn about the healthcare industry that's going to be different than someone who's working in, my last job was in the e-commerce space, right? But what is the same is that successful data work, in order to be a successful data person, you need to understand your industry. And what are some of the ways that you can judge how well do I understand my industry? And if I don't understand my industry well, what are some of the tactical steps that I can take to go and learn about my industry more effectively? And how can I, the typical data person experience, I think, is learning passively, where you're in the job, you get exposed to new ideas, you learn about them when you get exposed to them. And then however quickly you get exposed to things, that's how quickly you learn about your industry. The challenge is that you need to learn faster than that, right? And if you want to do top level work, you need to have a broad understanding of your industry and your company in a way that you're not just going to be able to wait around to get exposed to it. So there's sort of universal principles that apply across all types of data people, data engineers, data scientists, data analysts. It kind of does data PM. It kind of doesn't matter. You still need to learn your industry and giving people a frame. And that's just one thing you need to learn. There's a lot of things you need to do, but giving people a framework where a big thing is how well do you understand your industry compared to where you are in your career? If you're a senior, if you're trying to be a senior person that is analyzing what to do inside your industry, you should very deeply understand your industry. And if you don't, here's a bunch of ways that you can develop.
When you're a data person, though, if I'm working as a data analyst, isn't it just by working with the data over whatever period of time, wouldn't that in itself give you that business level acumen and training because you're getting more familiar with the data, you're talking to other people or stakeholders who may know the business better?
Yeah.
Um, can you not just learn that on the job?
Excellent question. So, back in my earliest securities analyst days, the way that they would explain how you come to an understanding of an industry or a stock or something like that is they call it a mosaic.
Oh,
And what that is, it's a bunch of different areas of understanding that you kind of put on a big board and you look at the whole thing. And then, based on looking at the whole thing, the various different data points that you get from different places, you'll make a decision. What I think data people get from having access to your data is high fidelity on one particular piece in a larger puzzle and sort of a bigger mosaic. And what I think data people need is the rest of that puzzle. Like if you spend a lot of time in your database, but you've never talked to a customer, you don't understand the competitive landscape, you don't understand your vendors and your supply chain and all of these other trends that are going on in the industry and things that matter for your business. Like if you don't understand enough about why people buy or why people churn, all you see is the database records when it happens, then you're not going to be effective in giving the type of advice that you should be able to or providing the type of data work that you should be able to as a senior person. Again, if you're a junior person, you're kind of just getting your legs under you and learning things, but by the time that you're at the mid and senior level, the what you're able to do if you understand your industry is just levels above what you can do if you don't. And yeah, we can. I have more to say about this, but I'm going to pause because I see your yeah.
okay. So as you're talking about it, and I was thinking, I'm like, okay, are you talking to data analysts only? Because there are different types of data people. right? You could be just a back-end data engineer. You could be a data scientist. They don't all necessarily speak or engage with the business people at the company. So are you targeting more of the data analyst, or is somebody who's a data engineer who's very technical, can they also benefit from this?
Yeah, so I'm not. I believe these things are universal, and there's a different level. Like there are degrees of it. So, for example, like if you are in customer insights versus a data engineer, there's going to be more talking to customers and customer insights versus as a data engineer. But two things. Number one, and I did this very interesting survey on LinkedIn. Most data people consider themselves generalists. And the reason is that data work requires a broad set of skills in a way that other professions don't always. Because even if you are a back-end data engineer, if you don't understand your business and the way that people think about your business and the common acronyms and the way that your data is going to be used, then you can't possibly be effective at putting together a good data model if you don't know if you don't understand the structure of your business, you can't effectively structure your data to support that business. Again, this is not a binary, it's a spectrum. But the idea that data engineers don't need to care about their business, I think is just wrong. Not to mention the fact that a good chunk of the skills that data people need are the stakeholder management skills, the project management skills, the data, like the mental model of how your business works. All of those are universal. So yes, there are going to be some like customer facing things that you're probably not going to do as much as a data engineer as you might do as a data PM, but you do need this broad skill set. It's just about how much you focus on depth in different areas.
So tell me your story though. Like, how did you learn all of this? Because you started off just, I guess, I'm assuming you started off, at the entry level doing Excel and whatnot. Did you, like, how did you get to where you are, and how did you learn all of this, or what are you training people on at Top Data People?
Cool. Yeah. So I'll say that for me personally, I've had a couple of really interesting job experiences that exposed me to learning a bunch of things really quickly, which I'll go through. And then secondly, managing large teams, it's very apparent who is doing really well and who's not doing well. And so by the time you've managed hundreds of data people, you can identify the different things and you're like, oh, these people were absolutely amazing. If I could have everybody be like these people, I would be the best data leader ever. Because that's the thing. Data leadership, and I don't know how many data leaders you have here, but like data leadership, a substantial percentage of your success is about having great people on your team. You, as a data leader, like you're essentially a recruiter and retainer of top talent. That's what you need to do. And so being able to identify who is really good at data work and why, and how do I find more people like that, or how do I coach people to become that? To me, I have always approached data work with that being the primary thing. So I've been a data leader for a long time now, so I spent a lot of time with that.
Yeah.
Um, Now, personally, I had two experiences that gave me like a very broad base of data work. So the first one was in that first job in finance. I started as like a securities analyst. I I got hired for a job that I automated away very quickly. And so then after they were like, oh, this person is highly effective at doing really good things, they moved me to be the analyst for like the management team. And so I got like a very broad experience of senior level business decision making very early on in my career. So that was one experience that I got. And then the second experience that I got was when I started and I've had actually multiple. The second one, I started a data team from scratch, and then so built out all of the infrastructure, supported every department in the company, built up a team at a startup. So I did that. And then third, I was in charge of like a turnaround, essentially like technology transformation, where we took like a very manual business that was like pretty substantial revenue and replaced all of the systems with machine learning systems of things that used to be done manually and like built like customer facing front ends, which is where part of my love for customer facing front ends came in. So I've had a bunch of really interesting like personal career experiences that exposed me to a lot. But one of the things that I try to teach and try, and I've seen this not just for myself, this is for a lot of data people, is that data is a unique industry in that we operate oftentimes in the margins between other departments and other functions. And as a result, oftentimes you can create your own job as long as you can justify it. Like if you identify an opportunity as a data person and you're like, we should be doing this. Here's what the data says. Here's how I would do it. And you've got like they'll oftentimes just let you do it.
Yeah.
And so this is where again, one of the things that I noticed about like top data people is that they'll create their own jobs kind of um, and so I don't think my experience is unique. I think a lot of data people have those kinds of experiences where they're like, oh, this is something really important for the business that we could use data for, and then they go and they do it.
So I think the common theme here that as you're talking through it, is that first of all, you need to be good at what you do, right? You can't like if you're not good at your job, then it's going to be hard to be, a top data person or a leader, right?
Yeah.
So you're good at your job. Then you have an impact, right? Like you mentioned, you were recognized as being somebody that created something new or had an impact at the company you worked for, and then they put you in a position to then grow from there, right?
Yep.
And so how do people know? Not everybody can be a leader. Is that fair? Right?
No.
Not everyone
This is not team leadership. This is business leadership.
business
So
leadership. Because not everybody is going to be a business leader, because I mean, if everyone's a business leader, then you have nobody to lead, right? So
no,
how
but
do
that's the whole point. The whole point is that like as think about it. Instead of leadership. Leadership is not the best word. But think
yeah,
about like because you're not you need to provide business leadership, but you're an IC. Imagine you were a salesperson. Would
yeah,
any company say we want a salesperson that's going to sell less? No. You would always want to be every company would want a salesperson who could sell more. And as an individual salesperson, wouldn't you always want to be able to sell more higher ticket, bigger products? Data is the exact same way. At some point, there is an impact that you're making as an individual contributor data person. How big is that? Are you someone that's being tapped or being pulled in to make decisions at the highest level? Or are you able to take what would be $20 million strategy and turn it into a $30 million strategy or a $50 million strategy?
mm,
If you are, there is an unlimited desire for people who can do that. And also, if you're there helping your company, they will always want you to be better. So I see this as any time that you're working, it's sort of like it's a craft. You always want to be better at your craft. There's no cap to it. You can always be better, and there's no limit. Like if all data people were better, that would just be good for everybody.
yeah, no,
There's no limit.
yeah. So you got to think of this like it's not about leading teams; it's about being better at your job,
Yes, correct.
right? Regardless of if you're individual contributor or a team leader.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay, so what are some mistakes that that you may see from people that are holding them back from excelling at their roles?
I think a lot of data people are very disconnected from the business. I think that plays out in a couple different ways. Number one is in their understanding of the business. Um, so that is like, and I've got in the curriculum for top data people, I've got like 5 foundational data skills, which are strong mental models, deep enough technical skills, executive level relationship building and communication, active, supportive, and opportunistic approach, and data, stakeholder, and project management. And like those are the types of skills as you talked about. There's no cap to them, right? Whatever level of seniority you are, you'll compare yourself to other senior data people at how you are on those skills, and then you can identify where you're strong and where you're weak. So within that, I think sort of within strong mental models, there's business acumen, which is just like generally understanding your business. There's systems acumen, which is you've got technical skills and then you've got an understanding of the systems in your company. Sometimes you can have great technical skills, but like if the data is in someone else's database, you get stuck for 3 weeks versus you understand your systems in your company. And then the third one is organizational acumen. Like, do you know who gets along with who and who hates who in the executive leadership teams? Do you know how to navigate inside of your company effectively? So I think that number one and number three are often weak points for data people where
Yeah.
they don't really understand their industry and their business, and they don't understand their organization very well. You're sort of very siloed, I guess, is the one word answer there.
Yeah.
And then the second mistake is the executive level relationships and communication. You're not cultivating strong relationships with people. Data work only has an impact through other people. Generally, you don't, because you're trying to make people make different decisions. You're trying to provide them tools to make better decisions. So you need a relationship with people. A lot of data people don't develop executive level relationships that are going to help them be as effective as possible.
I feel like a lot of this is not just for data people, right? It's basically like navigating office politics or corporate politics, right? How do you deal with different people and different levels?
Yes, but data people are unique in that data only is effective inside of a company if you can navigate those office politics. Like the marketing team, right? If you're just doing marketing, you can market. You don't have anything between you and your work. Sales is the same thing. If you're a salesperson, if you're sending emails or you're making calls or you're going to meetings, you're just doing your job, right? You just like you to the customer. Data people, there's intermediate step. It's you, someone else, and then the customer impact, which
Mm.
means that because there's always that intermediate step of the other people, you need to care about those other people if you want data to actually be effective. And yes, people can call that office politics or whatever, but like that's just the reality of you're working with other people. You're not working in isolation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think the recognizing that being a data person or data analyst requires you to have that the relationship skills is probably something that will set you apart from other people
Oh, yeah,
when it comes to
definitely.
opportunities, right? And I feel like when you have that, and you're able to communicate that and learn how to use it, uh, people can tell just by the way like you come off or the way you talk, um, uh, compared to people who are just technical. And it allows you to then have more opportunities and put yourself out there.
It is a night and day difference between people who are able to operate as peers to executives, even if they're lower, right?
Mm.
Versus people who are like fetchers of data. And it's understandable. Like if you're an executive, you're not just going to trust a random person who can run SQL to have access to your sort of decision matrix. And it's like because it's like garbage in, garbage out, right? We talk about it for data, but you also have to talk about it for decision making for executives. Are you the kind of person who an executive would want to bring in to make the most important decisions that they're going to make? Or if you're a data scientist, are you the kind of person that a product leader is going to trust you? Because data scientists make so many product decisions behind the scenes in their own brain, because the way that you approach your feature selection and modeling and everything, you people can't that's one of the things. People can't identify what you do right and what you do wrong from the outside, but the work product speaks for itself. And when you're a data leader and you understand the business context and you understand how data science works and you see how what data scientists are effective and not effective, it's very obvious that the people who understand the business and the industry understand, oh, if I'm trying to predict this, I'm going to need these four things because obviously I need these four things because that's the industry. Whereas if you don't understand the industry, you don't even know where to start oftentimes. So you can build a model and the business people will be like, oh, we built a model. But is that model any good? That is going to be a challenge if you don't understand your business. And that's why, again, I think it's sort of all data people need this understanding and the effectiveness just for myself, but also having been a data leader for a long time and seeing this across, many hundreds of data people, it makes a massive difference who understands the business and can work with senior people and who doesn't at all types of data work.
It really allows you to get a seat at the table, right? That's what it is.
Yeah.
You get your voice heard, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so when did you start the top data people?
It's been very recent. It's just been like a little over a month, which is
Okay.
crazy.
So you don't really have any success stories yet because does it take, I'm assuming you're saying it takes about 6 months?
I mean, I have some like already. It's actually surprising. Everybody on the calls comes on. It's all about how to deal with complicated and tricky interpersonal dynamics and company goals versus data goals, et cetera. But we already have some good success stories of people who like, I have one student who was a consultant for a while and has decided to go in-house somewhere and was just like, I need some extra support navigating this company dynamic for the first time in a while and like understanding where data is. He came into a role that is kind of defined, but kind of not. There's a lot of opportunities that maybe he could turn it into something that is interesting and senior and just like, he's been doing really well of like navigating what to focus on, what not to focus on, because that's the thing. It's like you've got to you've got to be a balanced in a tough way as a data person because you don't want to overstep, but you want to support and you want to come up with that. Like there's a lot of things that you can do wrong along the way. And so getting support has been great as just one example. But I mean, yeah.
So you could see the impact of this program. Like you don't have to wait 6 months.
No, it's like day one. You already
Yeah,
like, hey, here's the biggest thing I'm struggling with. And we've got like a community you can ask questions in and people can chime in. And, we've got calls every 2 weeks. And so you can ask, hey, I'm really struggling with this. What do you advise? And I'll have thoughts. Other members of the program will have thoughts. And just hearing a bunch of other people and what they're experiencing day to day and thinking about how they're approaching things will give you, gives you ideas for how to navigate your own situations. A lot of what we experience in data is pretty universal. Yeah, your exact flavor of it, your business is different than the next business, but there are universal themes that apply to everybody. And so the challenge is that you just have your own little tiny sliver of experience and you don't really talk to people about these kinds of things. You just kind of deal with them. And so here talking about it and not only talking about it, hearing a bunch of other people talk about it and what's worked and what hasn't for them just gives you so much more data on what works and what doesn't
yeah,
work, right? Like I don't think that I was uniquely blessed to be able to come up with all of these ideas from scratch. I came up with all of these ideas because I saw many, many, many examples of what worked and what didn't work to where I developed a point of view on how to do top level data work. And this is the same. It gives you exposure to a whole bunch of information that otherwise you would just be in your personal career silo and not get access to.
yeah. And it's kind of like an opportunity to have a mentor, right? Like there's a group, like, so um yeah, it's not just, I would say it's not like a typical course or program where it's like, okay, you know, here's you know, a business intelligence tool. Here's Tableau, and this is how you learn it. Let's learn it. It's kind of like a lecture and whatnot, and you learn the skills. And it kind of has a kind of iterative process where it's kind of a little formalized. Whereas this is, I guess, a little open-ended, and you can bring in some of your personal experiences into it as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And truthfully, the idea started out as a course. I was like, let me just put something out there with all of the things that I've learned about if I were giving my best advice on what it means to be a top data person. And I started on the outline of the thing and I sort of like kept working on it. I was like, this is way too big for a course because if I just put out 60 hours of content or whatever it is, like no one is just going to binge watch it and be able to effectively incorporate it into their actual life. So I thought, all right, instead of that, why don't I spread it out over 6 months? So each week you're only spending, everybody's busy, right? They have busy,
Yeah.
like I got two kids, like everybody's busy, right? And data jobs are all encompassing. So get it to where people only need to spend an hour or two a week on it and still make progress. And then also not just have it be this like one way only. Like if you saw something but you've got a question or you saw like you need to understand how to apply something or something came up and you want a little help, like that's why we do the coaching calls. So you've got this out in the community where you've got this opportunity to like clarify for your specific situation, because that is really helpful. I just thought that that was what people needed to actually get the best result versus a course. It would be tough to actually incorporate the learning into your job.
Have you thought about maybe like writing a book about this as well?
Yeah, I have. It's a lot of work to write a
No,
book.
no, it's
So,
a lot of work. It sounds like you definitely have the
yeah,
material and the stories to come to write a book, right?
yeah, maybe one day.
One day. Yeah. No, this is great. Great conversation. A lot of good discussions and topics here. Now, if anyone wants to find you or reach out to you, how can they do that?
Yeah, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. So Solomon Kahn on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
And there should be one like data Solomon Kahn. So just that's me.
Well, I'll put the link out on your bio on this podcast, and so.
Great.
If anyone wants to connect, LinkedIn is the best way. And should they just do an intro, or will you?
Yeah, just connect, follow along on LinkedIn. If you're interested in the program, you can go to topdatapeople.com. That's
Yep,
the link to the
yep.
program. It's also on my LinkedIn. Um, and yeah, I'm highly findable. So, and this is one of the things we talk about in the program even. It's like a lot of data work is person to person. You can reach out to people and connect with them and say, "Hey, you're building this recommendation. I saw you built this recommendation system for a non-competitive company. I'm about to build it. Like, tell me all the mistakes you made, right? Like, those are the kind of things that nobody necessarily teaches you, but are really helpful when you get to the
Yeah.
senior level. It's not all about what you can figure out yourself. It's about what you can do together as a community. But yeah, just
Yeah.
go find me on LinkedIn.
We um we actually met at the at a data meetup in New York City.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you still going to them? You're going to have I haven't been
I
to
still
after that.
I went to the last one. I'm a big believer in go getting out the door and meeting people and talking to people. Uh, I when I started as a data leader, like the first thing I did, like I was at a startup, it was like me setting up everything. The first thing that I did was go talk to a bunch of people to say, like, what did you do? What worked? What didn't? Like, because otherwise it would have taken me years of experimenting and failing in public and expensive ways before I could gather information of what worked and what didn't work, whereas I could just talk to people. So
Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's great. It's great. I love
I'm a
going to
big
them.
believer in
And
developing a network as a data person.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's very important. So maybe I'll run into you again at one of those meetups. And if not, we'll definitely keep in touch. But appreciate you coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you, Solomon.